Late night bites with friends? Already hard to beat. That first too hot bite of fries you couldn't wait for, followed by ice cold Pepsi. Now that hits different. Suddenly, the energy kicks back in, the night goes longer, and the laughs don't stop. Because Pepsi brings out more flavor, more fun, and more of the moment. Food deserves Pepsi. Grab a Pepsi Zero Sugar today.
In 1931 and 1935, director James Whale brought wildly divergent pictures of the monster who electrified us all.
In 2026, we try a whiskey from the hometown of another favorite horror author.
The films are Frankenstein and The Bride of Frankenstein.
The whiskey is Sagamore Spirit Rye Bottled in Bond.
And we'll review them both. This is the Film and Whiskey Podcast.
Welcome to the Film and Whiskey Podcast, where each week we review a classic movie and a glass of whiskey. I'm Bob Book.
I'm Brad G.
And Brad, we are wrapping up a 3-week mini-series of films that started with 1933's King Kong and perhaps, very logically, flowed to 2005's King Kong. And now we're throwing it back to other horror films of the 1930s, I guess most notably 1931's landmark film Frankenstein, but perhaps more importantly for the King Kong connection, 1935's Bride of Frankenstein. This is the first time we've ever done a double feature episode. And I think, Brad, we're just going to have to wing this because this is uncharted territory for us.
And it makes
how you feeling, man? 2 movies.
Oh, dude. It makes sense because this is the Let's Make It a Double season. So it's kind of like a doubleception. Like, let's make it a double
Let's
inside.
make it a triple.
Yeah.
Yeah. One for my baby and one more for the road. That's what we do here on the Film and Whiskey Podcast, man.
I really enjoyed watching both of these. The impetus of it was the fact that Frankenstein in 1931, 70 minutes long. Bride of Frankenstein, 75 minutes long. I mean,
dude.
Just an absolute perfect double feature and the most easily streamable films we have ever had. No subscription required.
Nope.
Bob, tell the folks at home where they can find themselves some Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein.
Well, Brad and I super legally sometimes share a server of movies that we can watch together. And for some reason, we did not have access to that server this week. And so we were scrambling to find copies of Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. I actually did find some at my local library, so I had the Blu-rays as a backup. But just in Googling Frankenstein streaming, it turns out that these movies at some point fell into the public domain. And not just in the public domain, but like the fully restored 1080p versions of these movies are on internetarchive.org. So you can go to archive.org and watch Frankenstein in glorious HD and then watch Bride of Frankenstein. And when I tell you, these restorations, Brad, are immaculate.
Yes.
Like this movie, the first movie we're going to talk about today, Frankenstein, nearly 100 years old at this point.
Yep.
Looks like $1 million, dude.
Yeah, it is 95 years old. And as I'm watching it, they show like a close-up of Frankenstein's hand, the monster's hand, and you see the stitching where the cadavers were sewn together. And I was like, that looks like some of the best makeup art I've ever seen.
Yep.
I mean, it was beautiful and it was crisp. Like it looked so incredible. So if you want to have a delightful 70 minutes of your life spent watching an old film, just go find it on archive.org. It's incredible.
Boom. Now, Brad, before we dive into the movies in earnest here, during COVID, we were all locked in our homes with not much to do. And I decided to take some COVID time to just catch up on movies that were big blind spots for me. And at the time, I want to say they were either coming out with the 4Ks or the Blu-rays of the Universal classic horror films. And for those who aren't super familiar, this was one of the first kind of shared universes of characters under one studio. And so Universal started developing, if you look at the Wikipedia page, it lists like a 1916 movie they made when it was still silent films as the first one. But in earnest, 1931 kicked off this run of classic Universal monster movies, starting with Dracula, and then later on in the year, Frankenstein, which became such a big hit that it then kind of sparked them to do movies like The Invisible Man and The Wolf Man and The Mummy, also with Boris Karloff. And so you get these 5 characters that then become a shared universe. All of these movies generating tons and tons of sequels, but then also crossover movies. So like at one point in the Frankenstein franchise, you have Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. And it's just
Beautiful.
like the Godzilla Kong of its day. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So it's great. And I decided like I'm at least going to watch the originals of all of those classic Universal monsters. Now I will say some of those movies more successful than others. But I think if you're just going to watch one as a representative example, Frankenstein's kind of the one. It was the biggest hit. It was, kind of like when we talk about how Iron Man in 2008 came out at like the same year as the Edward Norton Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, but we count Iron Man as the one we want to count as the start because it just was better and a bigger hit. And I think that's kind of how we treat Frankenstein today among those Universal classic monsters.
Now, we are in an interesting spot today, Bob, because we are talking about 1931. We're also talking about 1935's Bride of Frankenstein. And I'm not sure how you want to approach this because I think we could spend the entire episode talking about the comparisons between the two films. And I think that could highlight both films enough for our incredible audience to get the gist and the feel for what we think of each movie. Or if you want, we could go one by one. We could talk about 1931, then we could talk about 1935. How are you feeling today? What do you want to do?
I think having rewatched both of these movies, my primary theme for the day is that these movies have one good script between them. And that I probably don't have as many thoughts on each movie as I thought I did. So
sure.
I think we really could do, let's knock out Frankenstein. Okay. Let's drink our whiskey. Let's come back and do Bride of Frankenstein. And then we can also talk comparisons in the second half. But let's spend this first half just kind of getting out of the way the classic movie Frankenstein, if you're cool with that.
Yeah, dude, I'm 100% in.
Well, that means that it's time for our first segment of the day, which we call Brad Explains.
Brad's gonna give us the movie plot with only 60 seconds ticking on the clock. So let's go ahead and hear your take with this little segment that we call Brad Explains.
Brad Explains is the part of the show where Brad breaks down the plot of the film that he has just seen, often for the first time. Brad, is this a first-time watch for you?
This is a first-time watch for me of 1931's Frankenstein.
Did you have any familiarity with the movie at all? Like, have you seen clips? Are you familiar with lines from the movie? Anything like that?
There's the tropes, right? It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. Yep. The picture of Frankenstein, like I've seen stills of the monster. Like that is maybe one of the most indelibly described like Hollywood monsters that you've ever seen. It's like Frankenstein in the doorway with like his shoulders up. It's like a good professional headshot. And then it's Kong in the gateway of the village. Like those are the two classic Hollywood monster stills. So I was familiar with it. I also, like many young students, young lads in school, read the original novel. And fun fact.
Nice.
Have you ever read the original? Dude?
No, but I've read enough Cliff's Notes and seen enough adaptations that I know how the novel goes versus this movie. Because let me tell you, brother, they are nothing alike.
There are some themes and things that are very similar, but they're vastly different. I've got to say, dude, Dracula and Frankenstein are two of the best classic novels I've ever read in my life. They are stunningly good.
Well, we'll talk a little bit about the novel itself after we get through the movie itself. Brad, you get 60 seconds on the clock to spoil this 95-year-old 70-minute film. So, folks, if you are upset about getting spoilers here, it will take literally an hour of your day to go remedy this blind spot in your movie catalog. Come back and listen to the rest of the episode. But Brad, 1 minute and go.
Frankenstein is a film that follows Dr. Henry,
Mm-hmm.
not even Doctor. Do they call him Doctor?
I don't even know.
Yeah, we'll call it, well,
Just
his
Henry.
name's Henry, even though, whatever. Henry Frankenstein, it follows him as he is seeking to create life out of death. He and his assistant dig up corpses, they steal brains, they set up a cadaver that has been sewn together from different corpses, and they try to bring him to life, even as his fiancée, Elizabeth, and some other compatriots try to stop him on this quest to bring him back from the brink of madness. He is able to bring his monster to life, who is born with a blank slate. He is treated poorly by the assistant, ends up killing the assistant, and goes on a rampage. He befriends a small child, but then accidentally kills her. And that sets the villagers in a panicked frenzy who end up burning him alive in a mill.
Boom. Frankenstein. Yes. Let's start by talking about the way that this differs from the novel. Now, if you want a more faithful adaptation, you could go back and watch last year's Guillermo del Toro film, Frankenstein, which it also takes its liberties, but is a lot more faithful. And especially in the sort of framing device where there's a ship that is frozen in ice, which has Dr. Victor Frankenstein on it, on part of this sort of mad quest to hunt down his creation. And on this ship, he recounts the tale of how he created Frankenstein. Then Frankenstein comes in and is very articulate. And he's like, nope, actually, let me tell you my Rashomon type story of how this all went down. If you are unfamiliar with how the novel of Frankenstein goes, it's probably because you are more familiar with the story beats of the 1931 film Frankenstein. And I think that's the starting point here, Brad, because there are very few movies in the history of movies that have more successfully usurped the way we think about a character from its original source material. Everything about, when you think of Frankenstein, you think of this big box-chested thing that has green skin and this weird Caesar cut and bolts coming out of its neck. That is all from the 31 Frankenstein. None of that is in the original source text, especially the bolts in the neck. And when you think about Frankenstein walking like this, that comes from this movie as well. And when you actually see why it happens in the movie, it's they took this and made it a completely different thing. But I think my point is, this movie influenced the character of Frankenstein even more than the original conception of the character of Frankenstein's monster did.
Yeah, the idea of him as this mindless monster, that is the key difference between the two. Because in the novel, it follows the monster after his birth, and he grows into this hyper-articulate philosopher who pontificates on the meaning of life. He quotes Milton throughout the book. He becomes this incredibly intelligent person who essentially is a mirror that's held up to humanity. Now, the interesting thing is you have a very similar sense here in the film, but it's more of he has an abnormal brain and he's completely mute and childlike, and he is imprinted, violence is imprinted upon him by this terrible assistant, and so that that's kind of where they diverge a lot. But once again, it seems like the heart of the book, this mirror being held up to humanity, still exists in the movie. And I think that's what I appreciated most. It felt to me even with the divergence of a articulate philosophical Frankenstein in the book to this mute childlike one in the movie, it still felt like it honored Shelley's original intention from the book.
I think maybe one of the places that I want to start is the treatment of the Dr. Frankenstein character, who, as you said, is called Henry for some reason, because I guess Victor is just like, this sounds too Germanic, so let's just call him, good old Hank Frankenstein.
Hankenstein?
Hank the Frank. Yeah. And you do get the classic, "It's alive, it's alive," which is an incredible line reading.
Dude.
But from the very beginning of this movie, you are kind of put into Frankenstein's plan in media res. And he has already decided and been collecting body parts from cadavers, freshly dead, hung people, and everything else. And you have the sense that this man is mentally unstable and he is losing his marbles as he tries to become God and create life. And I think the movie itself is really torn over the fact that the compelling stuff is the creation of the monster, but because they make the decision to keep the monster mute, you can only spend so much time with Frankenstein's monster before it becomes really boring. So they feel like they have to give Henry Frankenstein this like social life outside of the experiments. And Brad, this movie is 70 minutes long, and I felt like it was 25 minutes too long for what it was supposed to. I could not care less about his fiance, about his dad, who is like geriatric and looked more like his grandpa. Like none of the stuff outside of the laboratory was compelling at all to me.
Bob, I'm not going to lie. I loved Frankenstein. I'm like...
Really?
I think it is better than King Kong.
Wow.
Everything about this movie worked for me. I would agree with you that like pieces of the interrelational dynamics felt like they dragged. Like I hit the 35, 40 minute mark and I was like, I kind of felt like there was like maybe 10 minutes left in this movie. And then I was like, oh, wow, there's only like 30 minutes left. So
that's true. Yeah. I mean, even if you hate it, it's like, it's almost over already.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, the interpersonal dynamics worked. I think that the little like hint of like his best friend is interested in his fiance and she's like kind of interested in him, but she's committed to Victor. Like it's a trope. And yet it worked just to establish this baseline of like, oh, they have real lives. The dad is ridiculous. Like he is one of the most campy characters I've ever seen in a really serious film. And so I kind of like throw him out. He's not great, whatever. I would say that the relationship between Elizabeth, the fiance, the best friend, and Frankenstein is compelling enough. And even with slightly bad script, somewhat cheesy dialogue, I believe the relationship that they have with one another. And I believe in Elizabeth's love for Victor, or for Henry Frankenstein. Yeah. And I thought the relationships were great and they gave weight to what was happening between Frankenstein and his monster.
I think that's interesting. Yeah, because it's funny. When I watched this during COVID, I very clearly remember this being one of my favorites from, the 5 main movies. And watching it this time, I was like, oof. Like, I am prepared for Brad to come into this episode and say, like, this sucked and I hated it, because I found myself struggling with it, even on rewatch. I think that this is one of those films for me, on rewatch now, that it doesn't feel like homework to watch this movie. Like, it's a fun movie. It's still entertaining. I found myself really attracted by the visuals, which we'll get around to the direction and the art direction, especially. The lighting is incredible. So it's a fun movie. It's also, I think it occupies the place that I had King Kong slotted, which is like, it's an important landmark in cinema. It should best be remembered as an important landmark in cinema, not necessarily as a great movie. And I think that's kind of where I'm landing on it. But it sounds like for you, this was a significantly better experience.
I think it worked for me because they tell this twin story of scientific hubris, of Frankenstein believing himself to be God, and what damage that can do to the soul. So you have that on one track. And then on the other track, you have like maybe the first sympathetic villain of the film world. I don't know. Like, you feel terrible for the monster by the end of this film. He is treated so poorly throughout the entire movie. And I think that's why, for me, I never got bored watching him. Because even with him being mute and unable to speak, I think that Karloff does a mind-blowingly good job of creating a realistic, empathetic monster that you can care for. Even with these heavy prosthetics and makeup and all these things, there's something about his eyes. And to be able to do that in 1931, and like you said, the visuals of this movie are impeccable. And so it only adds to that element of, I really care about the main characters in this movie deeply, and the characters take the movie seriously, and they take the script seriously. And because of that, it feels like a really sincere horror film that asks really interesting questions about the human experience and the human condition. And so yes, there's some chintzy pieces of it. Yes, there's some cheesy dialogue that you get with movies that are barely out of the silent era. I'm willing to forgive those things for the story it tells about humanity. And to compare it to Kong is like a blast, really fun action romp adventure. It doesn't really ask any interesting questions about humanity. Like,
it almost gets there. It hints at them.
It hints
and
at them.
I think I almost gave it too much credit for like hinting at the questions, because, you know, part of my argument was like, they didn't really care about that in 1933 across the board, not just for that movie. Mm-hmm. That's not true if you watch Frankenstein. Like, Frankenstein makes efforts to make that a sympathetic character. And, you know, I almost want to, why don't we hold off on the Karloff piece of it until the second half? Because I feel like Bride of Frankenstein is much more a vehicle for deepening that character, whereas the original Frankenstein is very much about the mad scientist of Henry Frankenstein. And so maybe let's talk about that actor and that character more now. And to keep going with your Kong comparison, Brad, you know, one of the things that I thought was really funny about the 1933 Kong, having watched the Peter Jackson one, is that I made the argument that I think audiences in 1933 probably identified with Carl Denham and wanted to put their lot in with him in terms of like conquering this giant beast that was trying to, you know, take over America, and didn't sympathize with Kong. And I feel like that's kind of the same thing you get with Henry Frankenstein in this original Frankenstein, because my dude just gets away scot-free with everything he does. And like, again, that part of that is the source material, but it's just hilarious that this guy is like robbing graves and creating life. And, you know, the life that he creates is just murdering children in the village countryside. And they're like, you know, he's having a rough one. Why don't we just let him go convalesce at his family's estate while his creation is still stalking our children through the hills and murdering people? And they don't like, he comes back at the end and they're like, Hank, so good to see you again, man. Listen, 15 people have died. Not your fault. We totally get it. And so, like, at the end of the movie, he still basically gets everything he wants. Like, it is the most... My guy gets picked up by the monster, thrown off of a windmill, hits the blade of the windmill, and you see the dummy, like, fold over this thing.
Then falls to the
next
ground.
Shot falls to the ground. And then the next shot, he's just in bed, like, that hurt a little bit. Like, wait, that didn't kill you? What are we doing here?
Now, I will say that is a massive divergence from the book. Because in the book, he is a deeply cowardly character that runs away from all the legal things that follow him from his creation and disappears into the Antarctic running. I believe he's running away from... Yeah, he might be chasing, but he ends his life in the Antarctic. Like, it's a horrifying ending. Whereas in this one, it is a Hollywood, like, the hero
gets the girl,
putting that in scare quotes, like it gets the girl and saves the day. I think that there are some plot, like we don't really talk about plot holes on this podcast very much. There's some plot holes in this one where like the monster shows up with this little girl. She's kind to it, and they're throwing flowers in the pond. And then
first of all, best scene in the movie. Like it's shocking.
It's incredible. It is shockingly
I can't believe
good.
Yeah.
One of the best child performances I've ever seen. Like this little girl is incredible, but he ends up taking her, throwing her in. She drowns. And then like, this is the plot hole part. It's like the dad walks with her back to town and it's like, he goes, she drowned, but she was murdered. And you're like, how did you know that she didn't just fall in? Like, how do you know that she was murdered?
And also there's no investigation. The townspeople are like, yeah, she was murdered.
And then like the dad is telling them that his daughter got murdered. Completely separate from that, news reaches the Frankenstein manor that this monster is loose. And then somehow that gets communicated and everybody is going off into the hills to kill this monster. And like, it is one of the biggest plot holes I've ever seen in a movie where it's like, just everybody knows that it's the monster. So we're all going to go hunt it now. Don't worry. Like, don't look behind the curtain. Once again, I'm not giving this movie a 10 out of 10. Like, it is not a perfect movie. The part that was perfect for me, Bob, when that dad is walking through the rejoicing town holding his dead daughter.
Insane,
I was just like, the fact that they had the balls to go there back in 1931 is very, like, you would never see Christopher Nolan shoot a scene like that in a modern blockbuster, like most popular movie of the year. Wouldn't happen.
In fact, you and I both saw The Odyssey, in which a major plot point is how Agamemnon threw his own daughter off of a cliff as a sacrifice. Guess what they don't show?
Yep.
They don't show that in an R-rated movie in 2026. So you are absolutely correct.
Yes. So you get this incredible shot of him walking down. I found myself thinking of like the Bicycle Thieves. Like there was something about the town and the way he was walking and the camera was following him that reminded me of the main character in Bicycle Thieves, like wandering the town, feeling like his entire life has fallen down around him. For me, it was a direct connection. But man, oh man, the girl playing with him, followed by the dad walking into town with her.
So I think one of the things that really stuck with me this time is the art direction, the way they do the sets, but then the way they move this camera. And if you look up 1931, behind the scenes images from movies, the cameras are so big. And this was the case until the 70s and 80s. If you look at old Saturday Night Live episodes, you can see that even the video cameras had seats on them where they could then kind of winch people around on them. In 1931, the cameras are even more bulky than that. And the amount of times that you see a camera kind of swoop through a set or kind of pan across and wheel around. And then, to your point, in that giant outdoor town sequence, how they have this tracking camera that goes with the father through the equivalent of multiple city blocks of him carrying this daughter. And you've got extras weaving in and out, doing these twirly celebratory dances. I was blown away by how it wasn't just, we're setting a camera down, we've got a set, it's kind of phony looking. There's a lot of really intricate camera work here. And even when the sets are phony looking, they're phony looking because they're mimicking German expressionism. And so you get these high arching sort of rooms and kind of cockeyed lighting techniques. And when they go into a cemetery, all of the tombstones are comically large and pointed and things like that. And so it creates this incredibly eerie, surrealistic atmosphere. I just thought everything about the way this movie looked was a 10 out of 10.
Absolutely. I walked away from this movie being utterly flabbergasted at how much I enjoyed it. And I will say, we're 30 minutes into the episode. We still have a whole nother movie to talk about. I think, since we're doing two movies and we're having fun with it, I think we should give this movie a score.
Yep.
Put a pin in it, review a whiskey, and then jump into Bride of Frankenstein. How does that sound, Bob?
That's exactly where I thought we should go here, Brad. And I'll be the bearer of bad news here. I did not enjoy this movie that much this time. And I think I looked at my old Letterboxd score. I'd given it 4 stars out of 5, so call it an 8. I'm significantly lower this time on this movie because I just was bored out of my mind for most of it. I'm going to give Frankenstein 1931 a 6.5 out of 10.
Oh my God, Bob. Bob, that's an insane take. 6.5 is way too low of a score. I'm going to give this... Do it.
Give it a
funny.
9. I know you want to give it a 9.
It's amazing how, like, I probably would give this an 8.5, but I legitimately liked it way more than I liked King Kong, and I gave King Kong an 8.5. So I think I've boxed myself in. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10, dude. I loved this movie. I was sucked in. It took a little while to get going, but once it got going, man, I think it was incredible. From the moment when they show his face with I'm going to call him Igor, whatever the assistant's name is.
Yeah.
Like behind the slanted bars and all that. I'm just like, this movie was so much fun. It sucked me in and it made me think about life. So 9 out of 10, dude.
I'm glad that you did the 9 out of 10 because, I gave it an 8 originally. I was going to give it like a 6 on this watch. I should have averaged to a 7, but I really did not like it that much this time. And so I'm glad that you inflated your score because I think landing at a 7.75 on average is a really good place for this movie. I think it's absolutely worth a watch, Brad. And with that, let's put a pin in this. Let's go drink this Sagamore Spirit. What do you say?
Let's get to it.
The perfect lunch combo. That first bite of your favorite sub, followed by ice-cold Pepsi. Add a couple of friends, and now that's next level. Suddenly, the laughs get louder, the stories keep flowing, and the food tastes better. Because Pepsi brings out more flavor, more fun, and more of the moment. Food deserves Pepsi. Grab a Pepsi Zero Sugar today.
All right, so today we are checking out Sagamore Spirit Bottled and Bond Straight Rye Whiskey. Now, Brad, this is the first time we've ever done Sagamore on this podcast, which is insane to me because it is a well-known, well-respected brand of whiskey that comes from Baltimore, Maryland, home of not Mary Shelley, but Edgar Allan Poe. So there's some sort of horror trope tie-in there.
Yeah, Bob, I have been really excited to drink Sagamore because as everybody knows, we both like rye a lot. I really love rye. And Sagamore is like a well-known piece of the rye whiskey game. So coming in today, we're drinking their Bottled and Bond Rye, which is a unique expression that they have released. I'm excited to get into it. I've already drank it. You have not drank it. Are you ready to take a sip while I give my nosing notes?
Yeah, let's give just a couple more stats or figures on this. So it's a 6-year age-stated product. It says that it is a blend of 2 separate rye mash bills, one high rye, one lower rye, which I would assume would be like a 5149. I don't know if it's blended prior to aging or if they age the mash bills separately and then blend together at the end. I would imagine it's the latter, just to kind of like sort out those legal terminologies that we get here. In any case, I'm excited to dive in, Brad. Like you said, I've got it here in front of me. You go on ahead and give your nosing notes while I stick my nose in this glass here, Brad.
I deeply enjoyed this. There is like a really rich cheesecake vibe going on here. The rye comes through, the mint comes through. It's got caramel and it's got some like nice little bit of tart green apple. I think this is a stellar rye nose. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10.
I'm glad that they said that they blended 2 mash bills here. And I don't know if that's actually what I'm experiencing is like these notes are from mash bill 1, but it does help me kind of categorize how interesting it is that on the very front of this like nosing experience, it's super bourbon heavy. It's really caramely to me, decadently sweet. And then the back half of it is like classic dill rye notes. Like I didn't get mint so much as I got the kind of dill branch of the rye world, which I really love, because if I'm going to drink a rye, I want it to smell and taste like rye. And so this has like all those great characteristics of a really well matured rye grain with that sort of like sour rye mash that we really love. So I'm going to give this an 8.5 on the nose, Brad.
I think when it gets to the palate, for me, the richness of the caramel and cheesecake turns into like this beautifully sugary apple pie filling. There is peach notes in here. And then it like moves into a spiciness of like mint and cinnamon that somehow you put all of that together and it is a really tasty palate, like stunningly good. I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10.
The only negative here in the drinking experience to me is that it tastes to me more like a high rye bourbon than a rye. And so that may be because I'm getting some of those more like caramely notes here, but that's what dominates. It's a really sweet rye, which I'm sure you really love, Brad, because you famously hate dill and pickles. So like anything that's in that sweeter rye range, I imagine you would really gravitate towards. I wish I got some of those more big sour rye notes on this. It's still really pleasant, but if you had plopped this down in front of me blind and said, what does this taste like? I would say that it's like a high rye bourbon. I'm not going to ding it too much for that, but I'm going to come down to a 7.5 on the palate, Brad.
For me, the finish is where it slightly tailed off just a little bit, and it is because the sweetness completely falls away, and it definitely falls into, this is the first time for me, I was like, yeah, this is a dill heavy finish, along with some black pepper, some cinnamon, a little bit of that like kind of oaky, caramely bourbon notes. I'll give it a 7.5 on the finish. Still really, really tasty, just a little bit down from the peak it is at the palate.
I think I'm at a 7.5 as well. For me, it turned a little more bitter. Like I got a lot more char notes on the back of this. Black pepper for sure. But I hate when you kind of, it tips into that like not quite tannic, but just like cigar ash kind of barreled note. And that's where this one went. So it's good, but it's a 7.5 for me. And that takes us to balance, where I think overall, this is a well-balanced whiskey. I'm kind of waffling between a 7.5 and an 8. I think I will stick at a 7.5 just because the nose was so complex. And then the tasting experience and the finish kind of tapered off a little bit from there.
Yeah, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 on balance. I think this has all the things you want out of a complex rye, where it has the richness, the decadence, but it also has those nice minty dill rye notes going on. This is a really, really tasty rye that I'm a huge fan of. So 8 out of 10 on the balance. And for the value, Sagamore Spirits Bottled and Bond has an MSRP of $59. So you're looking at $60 for a well-aged product that's sitting at 100 proof. You could mix it in. You can make yourself a Manhattan. You can drink it neat. It is a really, really tasty product at only $60. I think this is an 8 out of 10 for me, Bob.
I'm looking at the Whistle Pig Piggyback Rye as a comparison point, and that's a 6-year product as well. And that is also retailing at $60. So it really is adhering pretty close to that principle of like $10 per year of aging. I think like this is right there with a piggyback rye for me. And it comes from a much smaller distillery. This is still like a craft distiller, even if we don't want to consider it that, when you're comparing it to some of the bigger players in the industry. I don't think this is a bad value at all, Brad. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 here.
Yeah, Bob, this is a great whiskey. I am coming out to a 40 out of 50 for my total score. I'm really impressed with this. It's not like a top tier A-list, like one of the best ryes I've ever had, but man, I'll be darned if this isn't an absolutely delicious rye whiskey.
Yeah, I'm coming out to a 39. So we're right in league with each other here. 39.5 on average, or a 79 out of 100. So just barely shy of that 40 mark for us. I will say, if you just asked me in a vacuum, is this a 40 out of 50 whiskey? I'd probably say no. That doesn't mean I dislike it at all. And I give it a pretty easy thumbs up recommendation to try or buy. It just doesn't quite hit like the upper echelon of whiskeys that we've had on the show. But if this is the starting point with our relationship with Sagamore Spirit, I'm super excited to see where we go from here, man.
Yeah, the Sagamore Spirits is doing incredible work in a world that's a little bit underappreciated. Like, I know that rye is available everywhere, but in comparison to how much bourbon gets sold in the world, like rye is minuscule comparatively. So anytime I get a chance to shout out a really good rye brand, I'm going to take it. So Film and Whiskey Nation, if you want to get into the world of rye, you could do a lot worse than Sagamore Spirits. They are making incredible juice over there.
All right, man. We have wrapped up this review and we've wrapped up Frankenstein. What do you say we talk about The Bride of Frankenstein?
Let's get to it.
The perfect lunch combo. That first bite of your favorite sub, followed by ice-cold Pepsi. Add a couple of friends, and now that's next level. Suddenly, the laughs get louder, the stories keep flowing, and the food tastes better. Because Pepsi brings out more flavor, more fun, and more of the moment. Food deserves Pepsi. Grab a Pepsi Zero Sugar today.
All right, everybody. That was Sagamore Spirit's Bottled in Bond Rye, a whiskey that Bob and I both deeply enjoyed. Now,
Yeah.
Bob, I'm curious. This is our first time we've ever done two movies in one episode. Would you
Sure
like
is.
to just restart, do another Brad Explains, go through the whole episode? The reason I ask is I did prepare a Two Facts and a Falsehood combining both movies. If for the sake of time you want to move on, we can do that. If you want to lose again.
No, in fact, I was freaking out because I was like, did I forget to do Two Facts and a Falsehood for the first? I'm glad you combined them because that would get a little bit tedious. But no, we have a tradition around here, Brad. And it's
That's
me
right.
beating you at our next game, which we call Two Facts and a Falsehood.
Brad is gonna try to stump you, Bob, to our right and what is wrong. Two facts and a falsehood.
Two Facts and a Falsehood is the part of the show where Brad presents me with 3 items as fact about the making of these movies, one of which is a complete lie. Now, I believe I am sitting at 4-1 on the season right now, Brad. It's been a pretty good start for old Bob here.
You sure are, Bob. It's been a great start. Now, I will give you this little piece for this week. For all 3 facts, in general, I just copy and paste the true facts from IMDb's trivia page. For this specific week, I have added the words in The Bride of Frankenstein or in Frankenstein to all 3 facts so that we know which movie I'm talking about. Does that sound good?
Now, I do want your assurance as we go into this that you wouldn't just take a fact from Bride of Frankenstein and say in Frankenstein, and that would be your difference, and that would make something false. Because that's incredibly petty if you did that.
I would not do that.
Okay, cool. Then I am on board, and I think it is time for you to hit me with your 2 facts and a falsehood.
Fact number 1. In The Bride of Frankenstein, the tiny mermaid in Dr. Pretorius's bottle was Josephine McKim, a member of the 1924 and 1928 U.S. Women's Olympic swim teams.
Cool.
Fact number 2. In Frankenstein, despite the original novel naming the main character Victor Frankenstein, the Universal picture is based on the 1927 play, where playwright Peggy Webling changed the name to Henry. Universal Studios slightly retconned this in 1939's Son of Frankenstein by putting Henry Victor Frankenstein on the titular character's tombstone. Fact number 3. In The Bride of Frankenstein, the homunculus created by Dr. Pretorius were based on the Germanic fairy tale called Frau Halle, which tells a story about a magical farm wife who captures thieves and turns them into small people.
Brad, I'm going to be honest with you. I have absolutely no inkling of an idea which one is the falsehood here.
You mean you didn't do deep research on both movies?
No. Josephine McKim. No, I did not. I'm gravitating towards 1 and 2 as the falsehoods. If you made up 3, like, I don't know anything about German fairy tales. So, like, good job. You got me.
Okay.
Number 1 could totally be a made up Brad G creation because there's really not, like, the whole fact is, like, this person did something else with their life. And, like, that's not a compelling fact. So, like, sure. For the sake of actually trying to nail you down and have a, like, I gotcha, I'm going to say fact number 2 is the falsehood.
Okay.
Because I wasn't familiar with a stage play that this was based off. It may totally have been. I have no idea. I'm just going to lock in number 2 as the falsehood, and we'll see where we go from there, Brad.
We have gone into a place you've not often gone this season, which is losing.
Oh.
Fact number 3 was the falsehood, Bob.
Hey, nicely done, my
Thank
German
you.
friend.
Frau Halle was a Germanic fairy tale that I just Googled, and it was absolutely not. I just literally just Googled, what are some names of traditional Germanic fairy tales? And it was like Frau Halle. I was like, done.
Perfect. We did it. Well, you got me this week. I should have studied up on my Germanic fairy tales. I do remember reading a thing that was like James Whale, the director, just really didn't care about continuity with the Germanic village. And so that's why it seems to take place both in the 1890s and in the 1930s at the exact same time. Like the people are all wearing lederhosen, but then like all of the suits, all of the hairstyles, it's all 1930s. And to move into the Bride of Frankenstein, at one point, they're just like, talk into this electric machine. And it's a telephone. And it's like, oh, okay. So we're doing phones now. Like, whatever. So I do love that instead of staying tied to one time period, though, it's kind of just meant to be like, I guess, contemporaneous, but in a very remote sort of German village. And so you get the sort of spookiness of these like classic continental horror tropes, but updated for 1930s audiences. I really liked those decisions to not stay tied to that.
Sure. Are you talking about for both films or like specifically Bride versus?
For both films, I feel like as we get into Bride of Frankenstein, let's go ahead and do this, Brad. It's time for Brad Explains. How about that?
2 times in one episode?
Brad Explains again. This is the
movies,
part of the episode.
Double the explaining.
It would be hilarious if you were like, I have seen Bride of Frankenstein before, but not... I think the best preface here is like, as I was watching King Kong, I was trying to mentally remember what parts of Frankenstein does this remind me of versus Bride of Frankenstein. And it turns out it was mostly just Bride of Frankenstein. So I probably should have just picked Bride of Frankenstein for us to talk about today. But it would have been really weird to talk about the sequel to the original and never do the original. I'm glad we did both. But Brad, that's my tee up for you to get into Brad Explains, wherein you will spoil this 75-minute film. You get 1 minute, Brad, and go.
Bride of Frankenstein follows the first film, Frankenstein. It came out in 1931. Have you heard of it, Bob?
Vaguely, yeah.
Okay. Well, it follows that film immediately after the mill has burnt to the ground. And it turns out that Frankenstein survived. Somehow.
Palpatine returned.
So Frankenstein returns, and he is fought off by the villagers, and he wanders around. And in the meantime, Frankenstein, the not Dr. Henry, he is like convalescing, but then he gets better. And then this Dr. Pretorius comes in and goes, hey, we're going to make another monster, and it's going to be a woman. And I've made these tiny people. Look at them. With our combined powers, we could rule the world. And then stuff happens. And I'm just going to spoil it right now, Bob. This is like a 2 out of 10 movie. It is one of the worst.
Let's do it.
Worst movies we have ever watched on this podcast. I cannot
I'm
tell
so excited
you how much I hated this movie.
I'm so excited because I think I like this movie better than the original.
Bob,
I think that this movie. Just let me. Okay, just let me.
There's so many times where I think that like we're in alignment, and then I realize that only happens on the whiskey. Like our whiskey palates are there. There are takes that you have on movies that are some of the most mind-blowingly ridiculous things.
Okay, great. Let me please make my case for why this movie is the movie I wanted to talk about today. So I think immediately when you start watching this movie, it's very clear that like, Frankenstein made a lot of money and they gave James Whale a bunch more money to make this movie because once again, like the camera moves incredible. I think the lighting, everything, it looks immaculate, but now the sets are like way more opulent. I will say, like, I guess I'll just list all the things I liked about this movie because I also like, this is not a perfect movie. Sure. And like, they make attempts at humor that are like very broad and presage, you know, when you get to the 8th Frankenstein movie, it's Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. So like, this is very much in that lineage. If you research this movie, James Whale, right before he'd signed on to direct the movie after not wanting to, he gets handed the finished script, tells a friend, this script stinks to high heaven. Like he knew. This script sucks. That's why I think both scripts suck, to be honest with you. There's one good script if you put both these movies together. I love the big swings of this one. I love that they're going for humor. I love that they actually do take bits from the original novel instead of just discarding it or completely adapting it. You know, everything with him and the blind old man, it's different than the novel, but that is a real thing that comes from the novel. I love the imagery. I love that they make Frankenstein an inversion of a Christ figure in this movie, that he is persecuted, but that, you know, if you go through like the Wikipedia page, there's been reams and reams of paper written on this movie and how, you know, Jesus dies and then rises from the dead. And Frankenstein is a doomed character because he rises from the dead before he gets persecuted. And so I think it deepens all of the themes of the original and it actually wants to discuss them. Whereas the original's just like Henry Frankenstein's like, I am God now. And then all the villagers are like, good for you, man. And then we never discuss it anymore. I think in this one, you actually do see the ramifications of, hey, look at this thing that I created. Now it's becoming smarter. Now it's learning that it has inherent value and worth. It understands what it means to be alone. Like, I just think that there's a lot more to tease out kind of in conversation in the second one than there was with the first one. Now, I would like to hear you specifically say why this one didn't work for you instead of just like it sucked, but like, why does it fail at accomplishing those things for you?
I mean, this truly feels like if you went from The Godfather, a very serious film examining what it means to be a human when you're put into difficult situations, right? Like on a very broad level.
Sure.
And you moved it to one of the campiest parodies of that genre that you've ever seen. Like the split from where the original film was to this one, I cannot emphasize how different this movie is. And it also
vastly different.
I mean, it is so jarring. And I was thinking about it. I was like, even if you had told me, hey, Brad, which I never want you to tell me anything about movies. But like, even if you had said, hey, Brad, just be ready. The second film is campy. The first film is sincere. Like, just be ready for the jarring shift. Even if you had told me that, I still would have absolutely despised the second movie. I mean, and I know that it commits the cardinal sin of building a world and then just completely retconning the world. Like the first 20 minutes of this 75-minute film was just a constant like, oh, but that didn't really happen in the first one. Oh, well, like actually this is what's going on. Even the mill scene, like they make a point of showing that there were no women and children at the mill as it burned down. And yet they return to the burning down mill. And all of a sudden, there's this screeching, horrific woman there yelling about everything. And like, the dialogue is as bad as Somehow Palpatine Returned. The dialogue goes from, in Frankenstein, where it's like not great. It's cheesy, but it's not on the nose. In this one, it is flat out Frankenstein burned, right? The monster burned. Well, maybe he didn't burn, but he's dead. It is like light years worse than the first one. I think the only redeeming quality of the second film is the scene of the bride's creation. Absolutely the only piece of the movie that works, because in the original film, you have this sense of horror about this monster who is childlike and mute and wanders and is reacting to the forces around him. In the second one, you do have him learning, which I'm interested in. The acting performance from Karloff is so much worse in this movie.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Horrifically bad. And I don't think it's his fault. I think it's because they're trying to bring humor into the movie. When he's sitting there smoking the cigar, just oh, smoke, good. Like the whole caveman of it all, it reduces any sense of horror, but it also reduces any sense of connection that you have with the character, because now he's a jester to be laughed at rather than a character to be connected with.
Yeah, I disagree with that. I think that I'm with you. And this is actually Boris Karloff did not like the idea of making the monster talk. And, I think most people would say he was wrong about that, but it sounds like you're on his side here. I do think that it's hard to get over the hurdle of him going from sort of just like grunts and whimpers in the first one, where he is this childlike, almost toddlery figure, to this one where he's now learning language and he learns how to say like smoke good, drink good. Yes, that's a hurdle to get over. I found it to be like everything they do in this movie is specifically meant to increase his humanity and his believability and your idea or your sense of sympathy for him. And so to build, I think one of the most brilliant things about this movie is it's called The Bride of Frankenstein, and they don't create the Bride of Frankenstein until the last 5 minutes of the movie. And her entire purpose is to reject him after he has spent the entire movie, like, all he learns about the world is that it hates him and that he is alone and that it is not, the old blind monk guy tells him like, it's not good for man to be alone. And so you think he's going to become this sort of like man-made Adam. And what ends up happening is that because man tried to play God, his creation is just as cursed as the man himself should be. And so instead of finding that sort of like help meet that he was made for, she flat out rejects him at the end of the movie. And he has this realization that both for myself and for this new person that's been made, there is nothing for us in this world except constant rejection and aloneness. And it is better for us to be dead. And I think, you talk about the ballsiness of showing the dead little girl in the first one, the ballsiness to end your movie with the monster of Frankenstein killing himself because he realizes that this world will only ever be cruel and vicious to him, that's an insanely ballsy move. Again, like, either it works for you or it doesn't. As a narrative choice, I loved it.
Insanely ballsy? I think killing a small child on screen is insanely ballsy compared to like the monster of a monster movie realizing he's a monster and choosing suicide. Like, that doesn't seem interesting to me in the slightest. Especially when you couch it in the terms of a satirical, campy, let's make fun of the original movie as much as we can to show how ridiculous it is. I think that's the struggle I really have with this movie, is you can tell that, you know what it is, Bob? This is the last Jedi of the 1930s horror films. Because James Whale, like you said, did not want to direct this movie, did not want to return to the idea, the IP, the franchise, whatever you want to call it. He had no desire to. And they finally dumped so much money on his lap, and they gave him a shoddy script that he was like, fine, I'll take your terrible script and use it to make fun of and subvert expectations of of the whole thing, and we're going to use it to make fun of the whole thing. And so by the end of the film, it's like, yeah, I just wanted Frankenstein to die. I didn't want to return to it, so I'm just going to kill him off, and we're just going to be done with it. And to me, it took everything that was meaningful about the original film and gave it a giant middle finger and was like, actually, that was all really dumb and worthless, and we're just going to blow it all up in the end and have it collapse on itself. And then he blew it all up in the end and had it collapse on itself.
The way that you and I are interpreting the flaws with this movie, I think The Last Jedi is actually a really good comparison, because I've also never argued that The Last Jedi is a flawless movie. When it comes to this movie,
you gave it like a 9.5 out of 10, which is insane.
When it comes to this movie in particular, I think that it magnifies everything about the first movie, both what I liked about it and what I didn't like about it. And so I think an even bigger issue with this movie is, once again, everything that doesn't have to do with the monster, I think sucks. The Dr. Pretorius character, this very flamboyant, mad scientist that comes in, all the little people in the glass. What the hell are we doing? Like, what is this? It doesn't help add to the story of Frankenstein's monster, but everything with the monster, and because you get more of it this time. So like you get him wandering in the hills and getting shot and landing in the blind guy's house and trying to make friends and getting roped by Dr. Pretorius, and then the creation of the bride. I think all that stuff is really, really well done. And I think, to your point, there definitely is some level of like lampooning the original. But I found that when James Whale was trying to hone in on his real theme and point, he stopped doing that. And so the stuff with the monster, like seeing the monster cry, to me was very moving. And I found that, like, okay, we're not lampooning this creature. We want to see this creature as a tragic figure. And I think that's the reason that I internally like link this to King Kong, is you can have as much fun with the Carl Denham and guys getting eaten by bugs and whatever else as much as you want. You got to get the audience's sympathy on the side of the creature. And so whatever flaws you might find with this movie, I think it actually strengthens the ability to sympathize with the creature from the original to this one.
But you can't separate the fact that this is a cash grab. And it's the exact same problem that you had, Bob, with what's the second to last Avengers movie where he snaps half the people out of existence? Age of Ultron? Infinity War. It's the exact same thing. Like, have the balls to kill off the characters and be done with it. Like, yeah. Frankenstein exists on its own as a incredible film with a complete arc of a story. It's all resolved at the end. You have the sympathetic death of Frankenstein when he's whimpering, screaming in terror, dying underneath a fallen beam in a burning up mill. Like, that is all the death that I need. I don't need him going, I also got rejected. Oh, like, it is such an obvious cash grab that in a weird way, I respect James Whale for being like, this is such an obvious cash grab. I don't want to do it. So I'm just going to lampoon the entire thing. And I kind of respect that, because it seems to me like he's making fun of it. But I like the source material so much that it makes me angry that he's lampooning it. And I would rather
one of my favorite things. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I would just rather him have taken it and said, okay, well, if you want me to make more of this, I'm going to give you an even better version of it. And to me, it comes back to like the hopeful versus cynical worldview. Like, the cynical worldview is like, I already created this thing, and if you want more of it, then F you, I'm just going to lampoon it and make fun of it. Versus he could have taken it and gone a hopeful direction and been like, okay, well, let's dive deeper into these themes and see what else we can explore with it. And instead, he just made fun of it.
One of my favorite things about this podcast, it's one of my favorites, and it's also one of the most infuriating, is when you really like a movie, all of your arguments are in good faith.
Sure.
And when you kind of like a movie, you're like, a lot of this didn't work, but I want to, in good faith, see what the filmmaker was trying to do. When you dislike a movie, you do things like make the director of the movie have a voice that sounds like Frankenstein when you say subvert expectation.
Oh, I wasn't making fun
It's
of
just-
James Whale. I was making fun of another director.
It's just so funny to me. Like, when you dislike a movie, I can see that your anger overrides like most logical faculties, and you're like, I'm F this movie. I don't want to engage with it whatsoever, which I guess makes for fun social media clips. I just wish that like we could actually talk about the themes of this movie more than we have. But at this point,
I mean,
it kind of seems
say,
like,
Bob, how am I not talking about the themes of the movie? Like I've been engaging with the themes of the film, which are to subvert expectations, to lampoon the original, to try to deepen certain elements of it, and none of it works for me in any honest sense. So
here we are.
Yeah, here we are.
Let's give this movie scores, and then
Sure.
let's move into let's make it a double, because I think that'll be interesting to see. Are you considering the 2 for your let's make it a double, or are you just going to discard this movie altogether and do one based off of Frankenstein? I don't think that this movie is significantly better than the original. I do kind of wish I'd given the original a 7 now, because you're going to get pissed off at me for giving this one a 7.5. This is a deeply flawed movie. I just, if I'm going through the YouTube shorts and watching clips from both movies, I think this movie has more scenes in it that I find successful than the original, which really only has it's alive, the girl getting drowned, and then, Henry getting tossed off a windmill. This one, I think, has like whole sequences that are really technically advanced and work emotionally for me. So I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. Are you sticking with your 2 out of 10 ranking for this one, Brad?
I think that this film is a 2 out of 10 movie with which we never really got to what I liked about it. The only things I liked about it were the technical craft. The lighting is still incredible. The camera movement is still incredible. And the scene of the bride being brought to life is the exact same scene, but enhanced and just done a little bit better. So there are elements of this movie I like just because of the scene of the bride and a few other pieces of the film and the introduction of Dutch angles during that scene. Just impeccably done. Just because of that, I will come up to a 3.5.
3.5, baby. That takes us to a 5.5 out of 10 for renowned classic, The Bride of Frankenstein. Brad, I guess my first question as we get into let's make it a double. Let's say I never chose Bride of Frankenstein. Do you feel like the original Frankenstein is linked enough to King Kong that it would have made sense as a pick on its own?
I think it's linked to the original King Kong for sure. Just for the iconicness of it, like the iconic image of Frankenstein in the doorway, the iconic image of Kong, like it lives on in classic horror Hollywood that I'm like, I 100% think they match. I think both stories also explore similar themes of like human hubris and pride and trying to control things that they ought not try to control. So I think there's a lot of elements. It's a great match.
I wonder if The Bride of Frankenstein would be the let's make it a double for the Peter Jackson version. And the original Frankenstein would be the let's make it a double for the original
the Peter
Kong.
Jackson is a proper like fleshing out of the original and taking it seriously and diving deeper with the themes in a way that respects the original. So I would say that it's
so maybe I should have linked it up with like Godzilla Kong, a new chapter or whatever the hell that was called a couple years ago.
Who knows?
All right, let's get into let's make it a double in earnest.
We're near the end of the episode, so thanks for listening to the Film and Whiskey Show. Let's pair another film with this one, even if it's a struggle. It's our final segment of the day, now let's make it a double.
Let's Make It a Double is the part of the show where we pick a movie to pair up with these two to make the perfect double, triple feature. Brad,
Bob,
I'm interested to hear where you go here.
I'm going to make it a quadruple feature because we watched two movies for this, so we're going to pair it up with two other films. I'm going to pair it up with two films that are the first of a IP and a sequel, where the genres change.
Are you going to do what I'm going to do?
We might be doing the same two movies, Bob. I think that the perfect matchup of what should have been done with this is 1979's Alien and 1986's Aliens.
Wow. I mean, like the James Cameron sequel Aliens better than I like the original Alien. I'll just say it.
I would
just
agree
say
with
it,
that.
man.
But like once again, you shift genres, you stay in the same world. He takes the original source material, he honors it, he respects it, he deepens it, and he takes it in a completely different tonal direction. Like that, if they had done anything near that with Bride of Frankenstein, I would have been so utterly impressed.
Well, it turns out that we are not picking the same quadruple feature. But as we talked, Brad, I realized that there was only one set of films that I could pair this with. And it is a very well-regarded original and a movie that I know you would absolutely hate as its sequel. And that is 2019's Joker paired up with Joker Folie à Deux, the much reviled sequel to Joker, which I think I told you at one point. It is a markedly worse film than the original, but it is literally the director Todd Phillips making the character of Joker be as much of a loser and an unsympathetic person worthy of dying just to get his point across that all of you guys missed the point of the first one. It's a punishing movie, and it also features like the creation of a mate for the Joker in Harley Quinn, played by Lady Gaga, and it has musical sequences, and it's like, but you know what? I actually kind of prefer the second one just because it's like, hey, he got it right this time in terms of what he was trying to say. Everyone hates that movie. I think you would hate that movie, and it tracks perfectly onto Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein.
It feels like if they took Fight Club and made a sequel and they were just like, hey guys, just so you know, Brad Pitt was wrong. He's the bad guy in this movie.
All right, so those are our Let's Make It a Double picks for Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein.
Bob, I have one last section that I'm going to spring on you.
Because
at the end of the day, the only reason we are doing this show is to put 32 movies into a bracket.
Yep.
Now, we've boxed ourselves into a corner here with a 33rd film. Yep. I think we need to do a play-in bracket to decide which of these two films makes it into the bracket right here and right now.
I'm glad that you brought this up because I was already thinking ahead about this as well. My solution was just going to be, let's take the movie that scores better and just discard the other one. Now, I guess what we could say is like, let's keep the Bride of Frankenstein on the back burner. And if something from this season happens to score even lower than that,
okay,
we'll bump back in the Bride of Frankenstein. Because listen, dude, something that comes out with a 5.5 average is pretty much guaranteed to be our 32 seed. So like,
that's true.
Does it really need to be in there?
All right. So if we get a movie this season that is lower or equal to a 5.5, we'll do a play-in tournament. We'll see which of the low seeds makes it in for the 32 spot.
I love it.
Okay.
All right. We want to know what you think about both Frankenstein and The Bride of Frankenstein. You can let us know on any of our social media accounts: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube at Film Whiskey.
Or if you want to join the conversation, we are on the Discord server every single week, chit-chatting, talking, discussing the world of movies and whiskey, and we want you to join the conversation. So you can find a link to our Discord at the end of every single one of our show notes.
Brad, we are on a freaking roll here because not only are we staying camped out in old Hollywood, but we've got another movie next week that I believe is like 75 minutes long. It is an all-time silent movie classic from someone we've never talked about before, Buster Keaton. It's his masterpiece called The General. So we will be revisiting old Hollywood and spending very little time doing it next week. Join us for The General, but until then, I'm Bob Book.
I'm Brad G.
And we'll see you next time.
This episode is brought to you by ChatGPT. Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast. Have you guys heard about ChatGPT work? It's the new way to use ChatGPT for bigger multi-step projects. And when you need more than just answers, give ChatGPT work access to your apps and files, and it can create real work documents like spreadsheets, slides, and structured reports. Get started at chatgpt.com by selecting work mode, available on Plus and Pro plans.